My fiancé spent 6 years shaming me for not being a virgin and demanded I wear red instead of white to our wedding to announce my impurity to 150 guests. When I secretly got everyone to wear red in solidarity, he returned with a firearm, and that's when I discovered the real reason he'd become obsessed with training me. Brian had always been obsessed with virginity so much it was almost creepy. It started when we met. In passing, I said, "My ex liked that band," and Brian's face just crumbled like a cookie. Turns out Brian couldn't fathom that I'd had a high school boyfriend, one boyfriend, who I'd slept with at 18, 3 years before the concept of a Brian even existed. That first year was torture. He'd randomly ask about my ex during dinner, sulk through romantic movies if they mentioned past relationships. Once, mid-makeout, he stopped to ask if I compared him to my ex, which should have been my cue to run. But instead, he'd cry these pathetic tears and swear he'd get over it. "I just need time," he'd say. "I've never felt this way before." So I stayed, like an idiot, thinking love could fix his weird purity complex. By year 2, the comments stopped along with the sulking and questions, which made me think we'd grown past it as we moved in together. 4 years later, he proposed with his grandmother's ring at sunset on the beach, and I said yes to what I thought was a changed man, until a month ago when everything unraveled over wedding dresses. "I was talking to my coworkers," Brian announced during dinner, "and I don't think you should wear white," which made me laugh because I thought he was joking about some wedding tradition, but he wasn't laughing. 2 weeks later, I put down a deposit on my dream dress, a stunning white ball gown with delicate lace, and when I told Brian, he lost his mind. "What color is it?" he demanded, and when I said white, he actually stomped his foot like a toddler before declaring, "You can't wear white because white is for pure women." Pure. That word hung between us like a grenade. 6 years, and we were back to him obsessing over my virgin status like some medieval lord. He wanted me to wear red to announce to our 150 guests that I was some fallen woman who dared to have a life before him. "It's different for guys," he spat when I pointed out his hypocrisy. "Everyone needs to know what kind of woman you are, and wearing white would be deceiving them." He even dragged his mother into it, but instead of taking his side, she suggested he should wear red too, which made him burst into tears because mommy wouldn't help him slut-shame his fiancé. That's when I knew I was done. I'd learned to hide my rage from Brian, but inside I finally accepted he'd never see me as anything but used goods, forever punishing me for not saving myself for someone I hadn't even met. "You know what? You're absolutely right," I told him the next morning, voice dripping sweetness. "I should wear red." His whole face transformed as he actually thanked me for being reasonable and respecting tradition, while I smiled and nodded, mentally orchestrating his destruction. See, Brian had paid for our entire $30,000 wedding to impress everyone, but he couldn't be bothered with actual planning. That was bride stuff. So I made some calls, starting with the wedding planner. "We're switching to a red theme, passion red, and Brian's very specific about everyone wearing red for the photos," which didn't even make her blink since she dealt with stranger requests from tech money. Then I called every single guest to tell them, "Brian decided on a cohesive color scheme and he'll be so hurt if anyone wears other colors," making sure my bridesmaids and both families got the red memo while telling them to keep it secret as a surprise for how amazing the photos would look. I bought a spectacular red silk dress that cost twice my original, because if I was burning this relationship down, I'd look incredible doing it. I also told the planner to keep Brian facing the altar until I walked out because he wants the first look moment to be perfect. Saturday arrived like Christmas morning as I got ready in my crimson gown, watching through the window while red-clad guests filled the venue until every single person, from his stick-up-her-A's Aunt Margaret to my beer-belly Uncle Tony, wore red and the entire garden looked like a poppy field. Brian stood at the altar in his black tux facing forward just as I'd arranged, completely oblivious and probably imagining everyone gasping at his scarlet woman bride. But when the music started and he turned around, his face went through the most beautiful journey from smug satisfaction to confusion to dawning horror to pure rage because everyone was red. By the time I reached him, he was practically vibrating as he hissed, "What did you do?" And I responded, "Exactly what you wanted," loud enough for the front rows to hear before turning to our guests. Brian taught me about honesty in relationships so honestly, I can't marry someone who thinks my worth is tied to my hymen. The venue erupted in gasps while Brian sputtered and tried to explain, but every word made him sound worse until his own mother stood up and said, "You wanted to shame her? Like some scarlet letter?" He looked around at 150 disgusted faces in red, turned, and literally ran out of his own wedding. But he didn't run away or something. Instead, he ran to his buddy and came back to the wedding 20 minutes later, holding a firearm in the air. The air went ice cold. Every single person froze, red fabric suddenly looking less like celebration and more like targets. My heart hammered against my ribs as Brian stood there, arm raised, metal glinting in the afternoon sun. His buddy stood behind him, face pale and hands shaking. The guy looked ready to bolt but stayed rooted in place, probably too shocked to move. Brian's eyes swept across the crowd, wild and unfocused, before landing on me. "You think you're so clever?" His voice cracked, high and desperate. The hand holding the weapon trembled. "Making everyone wear red? Making me look stupid?" I forced my feet to stay planted even though every instinct screamed to run. Running would make this worse. Instead, I kept my voice steady. "Brian, put that down. Don't tell me what to do." He swung his arm in a wide arc, making several guests in the front row duck. My cousin dropped to the ground, pulling his wife down with him. 6 years. 6 years I wasted on you." His mother rose from her seat, hands extended like she was approaching a spooked horse. "Brian, honey, please. This isn't you. Sit down, Mom." He pointed at her with his free hand. "This is all your fault too. You were supposed to support me." She flinched but didn't sit. Instead, she took a small step forward. "I am supporting you by telling you this is wrong." "Wrong?" He laughed, sharp and bitter. "What's wrong is her lying to me, pretending to be something she's not." I watched his buddy edge backward, clearly wanting no part of this. Good. One less person to worry about. The wedding coordinator had her phone out, probably calling for help, but I caught her eye and shook my head. Adding sirens to this situation would only escalate things. "I never lied to you," I said, keeping my voice calm even though rage boiled in my chest. "You knew about my past from day one. You should have known it mattered." His voice broke on the last word. "You should have known I needed someone pure." My Aunt Margaret stood up then, all all 5 feet of her, red dress making her look like an angry cardinal. Brian Matthews, you put that thing down right now. He swiveled toward her. Or what? You'll tell everyone how disappointed you are? They already know. Look at them. All in red because she manipulated them. No. Margaret's voice cut through the air like a blade. We're in red because you tried to humiliate this young woman, and we won't stand for it. A murmur rippled through the crowd. People started standing one by one. My bridesmaids first, then my family, then his family. Even his golf buddies stood up, faces grim. Brian's eyes darted between them all, and I saw the moment he realized he'd lost. His support system, his audience, his validators, all standing against him in a sea of red. This isn't how it was supposed to go, he whispered, arms starting to lower. I took a careful step forward. No, it's not. You wanted to shame me. You wanted everyone to see me as less than. But all they see is you, Brian, the real you. His buddy finally found his courage and grabbed Brian's wrist, pushing his arm down completely. Come on, man, let's go. Brian didn't fight him. The fight seemed to drain out of him all at once, leaving him looking small and pathetic in his black tux, surrounded by red. His buddy started pulling him away, but Brian twisted back to look at me. I loved you, he said, voice broken. No, I replied, surprising myself with how steady I sounded. You loved the idea of me, the version you created in your head. You never loved the real me. His mother stepped between us then, facing her son with tears streaming down her face. Go, Brian, just go. He stared at her for a long moment before his buddy finally succeeded in dragging him away. We all stood there, 150 people in red, watching them disappear around the side of the building. The silence stretched until my Uncle Tony cleared his throat. Well, that was something. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. People started sitting back down, unsure what to do next. The wedding coordinator approached me, face full of concern. Should I? Do you want me to send everyone home? I looked around at all these people who'd stood up for me. My family, his family, our friends, all of them wearing red because I'd asked them to, but staying because they chose to. No, I decided. We have food, music, and a beautiful venue. Let's have a party. Without a wedding? She looked confused. Without a wedding, I confirmed. Call it a freedom celebration. My maid of honor grabbed my hand. Are you sure? We can all go if you need space. I squeezed her fingers. I'm sure. That man stole 6 years from me. He's not stealing today too. The coordinator nodded and hurried off to talk to the DJ. Within minutes, music filled the air. Something upbeat and decidedly non-traditional. Well, Brian really took seeing red to a whole new level here, didn't he? Nothing says I'm the reasonable one in this relationship, quite like showing up to your own wedding with a weapon because everyone wore the color you demanded your bride wear in the first place. People started moving toward the reception area, still looking uncertain. Brian's mother approached me, mascara smudged but chin high. I'm so sorry. I should have done something sooner. I knew he had issues, but I never imagined. It's not your fault, I told her, meaning it. He made his choices. She pulled me into a fierce hug. You're a remarkable young woman. Don't let him make you think otherwise. As she pulled away, more people approached. His Aunt Margaret patted my arm and declared I had more backbone than half the men she knew. My Uncle Tony offered to go have a talk with Brian, which I quickly declined. My parents wrapped me in a group hug that lasted until I couldn't breathe. The reception area looked strange with everyone in red instead of the traditional wedding colors, but somehow it worked. People started laughing, sharing stories, acting like this was just another family gathering. The photographer, bless her, started taking candid shots of people enjoying themselves. You know, my bridesmaid said, appearing at my elbow with 2 champagne glasses, this is definitely going to be a wedding people remember. I accepted the glass and clinked it against hers. Not quite the memories I planned to make. Better ones, she insisted. How many people can say their entire wedding stood up to defend them? She had a point. I looked around at all these people who'd chosen my side without hesitation. Brian had wanted to mark me as shameful, but instead, he'd shown me how many people valued me exactly as I was. The DJ announced dinner was served, and people started moving toward their tables. I noticed several of Brian's relatives deep in conversation, probably discussing what to do about him. That wasn't my problem anymore. I found my assigned table, the one where I should have sat with my new husband, and settled into my chair. My bridesmaids quickly surrounded me, creating a protective buffer of red silk and fierce loyalty. So, one of them said, raising her glass, to the bride who stood up for herself, to the woman who refused to be shamed. Another added, to freedom, I said, raising my own glass. To freedom. They chorused, and we drank. The food was excellent, though I barely tasted it. Adrenaline still coursed through my system, making everything feel surreal. Had that really just happened? Had Brian really shown up with a weapon like some kind of movie villain? You're thinking too hard, my maid of honor observed. I can see the wheels turning. Just processing, I admitted. 6 years, and it ended like this. 6 years of him not deserving you, she corrected. At least now everyone knows it. The wedding coordinator appeared at my shoulder. I hate to interrupt, but there's a small issue. The cake. I laughed. Actually laughed. What about it? Well, it has a bride and groom topper, and given the circumstances, take them off, I decided. Just leave it plain. Or better yet, do you have any red flowers? She smiled. I'll see what I can do. As she hurried off, I noticed Brian's groomsmen at a corner table, heads together in serious discussion. One caught my eye and raised his glass in what looked like an apology. I nodded back. They weren't responsible for their friend's actions. The sun started setting, casting golden light through the red-dressed crowd. In different circumstances, it would have been romantic. Now it just felt like the end of a very long chapter. Dance with me, my maid of honor demanded, pulling me to my feet as the DJ started playing something slow. This is supposed to be my first dance as a married woman, I pointed out. So make it your first dance as a free woman instead. She had a point. We swayed together on the dance floor, and soon other pairs joined us. My parents, his parents, cousins, and aunts and uncles, all dancing in their red clothes like it was perfectly normal. You know what the best part is? My maid of honor whispered. He paid for all of this. The man who wanted to humiliate you funded your freedom party. I hadn't thought of it that way, but she was right. $30,000 for a party where everyone chose me over him. There was poetic justice in that. The song ended and another began. My father appeared, offering his hand. May I? I let him lead me into a traditional father-daughter dance, the one we'd practiced in his living room. He didn't say anything at first, just held me close like he had when I was little and the world got too big. I'm proud of you, he finally murmured. It took courage to do what you did. It took stupidity to stay as long as I did. I countered. Number. His voice was firm. It took hope. Don't let him make you cynical about hope. The dance ended with him kissing my forehead and passing me to my Uncle Tony, who immediately started telling a story about the time he punched his sister's ex-boyfriend. Not suggesting violence, he clarified quickly, just saying some people deserve consequences. I danced with cousin after cousin, uncle after uncle. Even Brian's father took a turn. He apologized repeatedly for his son's behavior until I finally told him to stop, that Brian was a grown man who made his own choices. Still, he said sadly, we should have seen the signs. We all should have, I admitted. But we see what we want to see. The cake arrived, now decorated with beautiful red roses instead of the traditional topper. The coordinator had outdone herself. People gathered around as I picked up the knife, alone instead of with a partner. Speech! Someone called out, and others took up the chant. I looked at all these faces, people who'd witnessed my humiliation and chosen to stand by me anyway. What could I possibly say to that? Thank you, I started, voice carrying across the crowd. Thank you for wearing red. Thank you for standing up. Thank you for showing me that I'm worth more than one man's twisted ideas about purity. Applause rippled through the group. I cut the cake, feeding the first bite to my maid of honor instead of a groom. She laughed and smeared frosting on my nose in retaliation. As pieces were distributed, I noticed the crowd had relaxed completely. What had started as a disaster had transformed into something else entirely. Not a wedding, but maybe something better. A declaration of independence. Hey, Brian's mother appeared again, holding a slice of cake. I wanted you to know I'm cutting him off. Financially, I mean. If he wants to act like a child, he can support himself like an adult. You don't have to do that for me, I said. I'm not. I'm doing it for him. Maybe hitting rock bottom will teach him what my parenting apparently didn't. She squeezed my hand and disappeared back into the crowd. I watched her go, feeling oddly grateful. Not everyone got that kind of support from their almost mother-in-law. The party continued as darkness fell. The coordinator had lit candles on all the tables, creating a warm glow that made the red clothes look less jarring. People told stories, shared memories, and carefully avoided mentioning the missing groom. Last dance, the DJ announced eventually. Let's make it count. The opening notes of a power ballad filled the air, and the entire crowd moved onto the dance floor. We swayed together, 150 people in red, united in something I couldn't quite name. Not pity, not sympathy, solidarity maybe. As the song ended, people started gathering their things. Hugs were exchanged, promises to call were made, and gradually the crowd thinned. My bridesmaids insisted on staying while I gathered my things from the bridal suite. The dress I'd planned to leave in hung in its bag, untouched. The shoes I'd bought for dancing sat in their box. The emergency kit my mother had assembled lay unused on the table. All these preparations for a life that wasn't happening. You okay? My maid of honor asked from the doorway. Yeah, I said, and found I meant it. I'm okay. We loaded everything into cars, a strange processional of red-dressed women carrying wedding supplies. As I climbed into the passenger seat of my friend's car, I took one last look at the venue. In a few hours, workers would clear away all evidence of what had happened here, but the memory would linger. Where to? My friend asked, starting the engine. Home, I said. My home, not the apartment I shared with him, my parents' house. She nodded and pulled out of the parking lot. In the back seat, two of my bridesmaids were already discussing the logistics of getting my things from Brian's place. I let their voices wash over me, too tired to participate in planning. The red dress felt heavy now, weighted with everything that had happened, but I'd worn it well. I'd stood in front of everyone I knew and refused to be shamed. That had to count for something. My phone buzzed with messages I didn't read. Tomorrow, I'd deal with the aftermath. Tonight, I just wanted to go home, wash off my makeup, and sleep in my childhood bed where things had been simpler. As we drove through the dark streets, I thought about Brian's face when he'd realized everyone was wearing red. The shock, the rage, the complete incomprehension that his plan had backfired so spectacularly. He'd wanted to mark me as different, as less than. Instead, he'd shown everyone exactly who he was. Thank you, I said suddenly, all of you, for wearing red, for standing up, for everything. Please, my maid of honor scoffed, as if we'd let him get away with that nonsense. Still, I insisted. Thank you. We pulled into my parents' driveway, the porch light on and welcoming. Mom appeared at the door before we'd even parked, still in her red dress, arms already open for a hug. I was home, I was safe, I was free. And somewhere across town, Brian was learning that some stains didn't wash out, the kind that came from showing your true colors in front of everyone who mattered. He'd wanted me to wear red as a mark of shame. Instead, I'd painted his world with it. I'm totally fascinated by how Brian's mom decided to cut him off financially right there at the reception. What made her finally reach that breaking point after years of knowing about his issues? The car ride stretched in comfortable silence as we navigated through familiar streets. My bridesmaids had stopped their planning chatter, sensing I needed quiet. Through the window, I watched the city lights blur past, each one a reminder that life continued beyond the chaos of my non-wedding. My phone vibrated again. This time I glanced at the screen. 17 missed calls from Brian, 43 text messages. I powered it off completely and shoved it deep into my purse. At my parents' house, Mom had already prepared my old room. Fresh sheets, my favorite childhood stuffed elephant on the pillow, even the lavender candle I loved burning during high school finals. Dad appeared with hot chocolate, the kind with extra marshmallows he used to make when boys broke my heart. My bridesmaids helped me out of the red dress, carefully hanging it in the closet. Part of me wanted to burn it, but another part recognized it as armor I'd worn into battle and won. They stayed until I was settled in bed, promising to return in the morning to help retrieve my belongings from the apartment. Sleep came in fragments. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Brian's wild expression, the metal glinting in his hand. But I also saw Aunt Margaret standing up, my Uncle Tony clearing his throat, his mother choosing me over him. 150 people in red, standing together. Morning arrived too soon. My bridesmaids showed up with coffee and determination. We drove to the apartment I'd shared with Brian for 2 years, the place I'd thought would be our forever home. His car wasn't in the parking lot. Good. Inside, everything looked exactly as I'd left it yesterday morning. My coffee mug still sat by the sink. The bed we'd shared remained unmade, but something felt different, like the space itself knew everything had changed. We worked efficiently, my friends packing while I sorted through 6 years of accumulated life. The photos went into a box, though I wasn't sure why I kept them. The jewelry he'd given me went into another pile, destined for donation. I left his grandmother's engagement